Howdy, everybody. I wanted to talk to you about classroom theme for this year. Every year, try to come up with something mathematical and groovy, and I'm very pleased with this year's theme. So, let's talk about the year 2020. Oh, oops, that's not it. 2020. Perhaps you noticed this year that things were different, like perhaps when we got out in March and we were suddenly on lockdown and quarantine, and there's, all this pandemic stuff going on, and, things were kind of different. We hadn't had that before. And maybe, just maybe, you spent some time reflecting on the shape of the world today. And there were a lot of things going down, a lot of stuff on social media. So perhaps you thought about some things. And maybe, just maybe, there were times when you felt stressed or worried or sad. And just please know that you are not alone. There were a lot of us that had no idea what was happening and what was going on, and just the uncertainty of it can be really scary sometimes. And so, but that's okay. We're back to a new school year. So the good news, and all that reflecting and all that thinking and all of that negativity, whenever things are bad, sometimes those become good learning experiences. So we can all learn from this, and we can try to make the world a better place. What does any of this have to do with math? Okay, so glad you asked. Archimedes, heartthrob that he is, he did a lot of things in the math world. He spent a lifetime trying to calculate pi using a method of exhaustion, is what they call it. Not a method of, I'm so bored with this, I give up, but like a lifetime of working on pi. He's the guy I've told you about who ran down the street screaming "Eureka!" because he was trying to figure out how to determine if the king's crown was gold or not, and he didn't want to melt the crown. And so there's that story that I've told a bunch of times. He has been known for heat rays, and they've done stuff on Mythbusters and stuff like that, because the story was that that he could be on land and harness the energy of the sun using different reflective things and blast these ships out at sea with like these rays of light that would cause the ships to go up into flames. That was the reputation. Truth is, he probably more than likely used the brightness of the sun to blind people or to cause just utter chaos, but it still counts, as it's quite an ingenious thing that he was doing. And it was for the purpose of war. He's, trying to fend off attackers during the Punic Wars. He also was known for what they called the Claw of Archimedes, which was a contraption that would lift ships out of the ocean and shake them up and destroy them. And that again was for war efforts. He was killed in the Second Punic War, stabbed by a soldier, but he was considered incredibly valuable because he was just brilliant. Absolutely the most brilliant mathematician in all of antiquity. Quite possibly the greatest mathematician to have ever lived. And he was very much into simple machines and science, math, all that stuff going together. And he was just a phenomenal person, brilliant mind. And one of those things that he talked about one of those things that he used was the lever. He was very excited about the lever because the lever is a simple machine, and as such, it makes human work less. So, like, we people like to make everything kind of simpler for ourselves. So, say, for instance, you've got something heavy, like a planet, or a kid on a playground on a seesaw. That's a whole other story. But anyway, if you have something heavy and you have a lever, which would be just kind of a stick that's not going to break under the weight, you've got this lever. Again, the word means to lighten, so it's meant to lighten a heavy load. And if you have a fulcrum, which is just a pivot point, the word fulcrum means to prop up or to support. And usually when fulcrums are pictured, they're often kind of like triangular, so that the lever can fall either way. If you had a flat fulcrum, you can't really do anything with it. So anyway, you have a lever, you have a fulcrum, and you can put something heavy on one side, and you can use that lever. And if you're clever and put that lever in the right position, you can make your work way easy. And so he was known for doing all these sorts of things, just brilliant. And so there's a quote that he had back in the day, which has been translated in many different versions, but the version that I'm choosing to use as our theme is, "Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I will move the earth." Because to him, that simple machine was capable of doing so much that he could even physically move the world on which he stood if he were in the right place and had the right size lever. I mean, truth be told, the Earth's mass is like 10 to the 24 times something or other kilograms. And so he'd have to be so many meters away. So he'd be off in space past the Andromeda galaxy, but he could do it because that's how it works. It's, it's a simple machine, very clever. And so the 3 points, the 3 important parts of this quote is that he would need a lever, meaning some sort of a tool. He would need a place to stand, meaning a beginning point. And he would need himself to put forth the effort. So, your assignment that I want you to think about is, I want you to think about, how would you like to move the world? And I mean this in a very metaphorical sense. I'm sure that you have some sort of vision for your future, and you think about yourself as an adult, and or maybe an older teenager, and you're just thinking about where you want to go with life and what do you want to do. And somewhere there's this abstract sense that you have in your brain of something you want to do to impact the world. Maybe you want to help feed the hungry. Maybe you want to work with animals and find them homes. Maybe you want to educate the youth of America. Something. There's something out there, something in your mind that you vaguely want to do. So that's what I want you to think about. That's right. Move the world. Hashtag move the world. 5 years after the fact, I'm into Bitmojis. And so I'm going to be so annoying and yet so adorable. Look at that. So sorry, that's how it's going to go. So hashtag move the world. That's what we're going to think about. We're going to kind of put that in the classroom. I enjoy being this way. So what does this have to do with math? Well, I always tell you that math is a communication class, which it is. And it's not just about getting the correct answer. Lower grades, elementary school and stuff, you worry about how to get those tools, how to build on it, how to work math. But once you're up to upper middle and high school, it's about showing the correct answer. And you have to have like problem solving skills, and you have to collaborate with others, and you have to communicate those ideas. So again, what does all this have to do with math? Well, mathematicians are persistent and tenacious. So it's absolutely a good thing if you know facts off the top of your head. If you know 4 times 5 is 20, lickety split, well, that's still an awesome thing. That's not all there is to math. And sometimes there are problems in math and outside of math, but sometimes there's problems out there. There are problems out there that you have to mull over and take your time with. Like our friend Archimedes, who devoted an entire life to calculating pi. Good mathematicians tend to take their time, and they actually tend to be slow a lot of times. Mathematicians are creative. So great, 2 plus 2 is 4. What do you do with that? So you build these tools, and you get this toolbox, and you have to know what to do with those things. And so you find different ways to use what you know and to flex those math muscles to solve problems. Mathematicians tend to enjoy thinking in a very recreational way, just thinking. I love thinking about math problems, which makes me so much fun to be around. I know. But I do. I like to sit around and solve problems, and there's a lot of joy. If you get beyond the math that you have to do and get into the more fun side of math, it's really like, solving puzzles is really a very pleasurable thing. So in class, of course, we'll work on our toolbox because the man says we have to. When you go to school, there's a list of standards, all of these things you have to get through in order to make you good in college or to make you good in, in trade school or whatever. And I agree with that. I do. But sometimes some of that stuff is more about setting you up for other things. In other words, like you might not be in a board meeting in your 30s and somebody says, quick, what's the Pythagorean theorem again? Might not happen. But you're going to practice, we will practice together problem solving, and we will practice communication, and we will practice collaboration. All of those things are not only going to be beneficial to you in class, that's going to be so much more important to you in the real world outside of school. How to solve problems, how to communicate them, and how to collaborate with other people. So again, math, I tell you, is a communication class. It's about communicating logical ideas. You go to your English class, you learn how to communicate, like, all the emotional stuff, the interpretations of what you read and all that stuff. Math is the logic, the simplified logic of things, but you have to communicate it. I'm going to beat that metaphor to death, I'm sorry. So what we want to practice, we want to practice using tools. And by tools, I mean all of the necessary things, to all that prerequisite knowledge in order to do the things that you need to do in class. I know that the number one problem I see as a teacher is students come to class without all those tools. Maybe they didn't learn something very well in a lower grade. Maybe they just didn't fully understand it. They just weren't developed enough to get it. Maybe they traded schools at some point and just completely didn't learn an entire topic. All that stuff happens. And a lot of students come to class with just all of these holes in their knowledge, and it's normal. So we have to try to develop all of those tools and practice all of those things and get all of that stuff down. Fill that toolbox with stuff. And then from there, we have to find starting points, because after students ask, how do I do this? I don't understand. I don't know how to divide. I don't know how to do this. I don't know. After that is worked out, the next most common problem I see as a teacher is, where do I start this problem? How do I even begin? And that just is going to come from practicing and learning how to decipher what's being asked, how to take it apart, how to get in there and start solving it, start cracking at it. So that would be number 2. And we also want to practice putting forth an effort, because it's real easy to just kind of give up. But you get way more pleasure out of achieving something that's difficult. You just do. So, I mean, we're going to have to practice some of that and trying to get people a little bit more willing to try, and that's okay. You know, I do that all year long, every class. So what I want you to think about is, what world would you like to move? Meaning, what do you want to impact with your life? And that could be, again, you know, I want to help hungry children, or I want to work with, you know, animals, or just there's somewhere that you have some sort of abstract kind of idea of what you want to do. And this is not something set in stone. This is not something you're committing to. This is not something that you'll be required to achieve or you don't graduate. I just want you to think about the journey of life, the path that you want to go down. Where is your destination? And it might not be your destination when you're 50, 60, 70, but just kind of what's in your immediate future. And from there, I want you to think about, what tools would you need to do that? Do you need to get a special education? Do you need to get connected and meet the right people? Do you need to raise some sort of funds? So, and start working, you know, try to determine what sort of tools you're trying to get into your toolbox and how you're going to acquire all of those. And then beyond that, where do you begin? Once you have that toolbox and you've got all those things, well, what do you do? Do you get a particular job? Do you run for office? And I want you to think about how much effort you're willing to put in. I promise you that athletes are high-fiving each other, not just because they've won, but because they put forth so much work and energy to getting an outcome. There's such pride in that. And I want you to consider, how hard are you willing to work to do something? Now, if you are super clever, like Archimedes, you can move the entire world with very little effort, as long as you plan it right. And if you have all those tools, and if you have that good starting point, it's not like some, you know, strenuous thing that's going to kill you. You can make an impact, and you can do all of these things if you plan. And anyhow, tired of that metaphor yet? I know you got to be. I'm sorry. So, speaking of sorry, there I am being adorable again. So pensive and so adorable. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to working with you this year. I'm so glad everybody's coming back, and I'm ready for it, ready for 2020, and I hope you are too. I love you guys so much, and I'm just ready to go. I hope you are too. Bye.